Hey, you're listening to the Start Something podcast, where we take you behind the scenes on the founder journey, breaking down what it takes and how it can change your life. My name is Shruti.
And my name is Bailey, and in this episode, we are going to chat about manifestation. You probably have heard people throw that word around, and I think we both have a somewhat unique or at least specific relationship to the idea. So we're going to use the next few minutes to break down what that relationship is, how we've used manifestation in the past, and what relationship we have to manifestation, and also maybe how we've moved away from it in more recent times. So with that being said, Shruti, I know you have a really interesting manifestation story that just happened. So why don't we just start with that story?
Okay, so guys, earlier this week, I got the chance to perform at the Warriors game at Chase Center in their Bollywood night. And it was an amazing experience. It was beyond anything I could have imagined. And it was all due to manifestation. I can't even explain this in any other way or form. I was just telling you before this episode, I knew that I was going to be performing at the Warriors game. I didn't know in what shape or form, but I knew that I was going to do that this year. That was a bucket list item that I've had since I was a child, since I watched my dance teacher's daughter perform there. And I was like, oh my God, one day I need to do this. And here I am checking off that box.
So you said that you knew that you were going to perform at the Chase Center on Warriors turf, doing some kind of performance. Yeah. Did you just have that thought in your mind, or did you tell someone? Did you write it down? What was that like?
Yeah, good question. So the first thing is figuring out what I want to manifest, right? So watching my dance teacher's daughter perform was the inspiration of like, wow, I'm watching you on TV, like you're killing it. You just look amazing. Like I want that for myself, right? And then the next thing is thinking about that and coming back to that. I had no idea in the last 15 years when that would happen, really, but every year I just kept working towards my vision and my love of dance. Like I watched her do that and I was like, okay, well, I love dance. Like, can I start teaching dance classes now that I live in San Francisco again? Can I start just being more involved in the dance community? And through that's what opened the doors and gave me the opportunity to audition for this. So in a sense, manifestation is thinking that same thought over and over and over again, not every second of every day, but circling back to that thought and almost taking shots in the dark. So I just keep opening as many doors as I can till eventually I hit that goal, right?
I love that idea about taking shots in pursuit of the things that you're looking for. And I do feel like so much of this world and setting those intentions, or quote unquote manifesting them, has to do with that intention up front that you mentioned. And for me, I've been a manifestation skeptic for a really long time. And
really?
Yeah, and it wasn't until the past couple years that I started asking more questions about manifestation. And what really helped me develop my own perspective that truly felt like mine is I actually had to take a scientific approach, because I wanted to understand, okay, I can see that people are quote unquote manifesting these like incredible dreams, but what are they doing and how could that actually be real? And so I wanted to understand the neuroscience around manifestation.
Oh, interesting.
More so than just the like kind of the woo-woo nature of it all. And so
tell me everything, Dr. Bailey Farron.
And so there's this one part of the brain that you may have heard about in the past that is so crucial to the types of manifestation that I now like am really curious about and interested in. And that part of the brain is called the reticular activating system, the RAS for short. And that's the part of your brain that operates as a filter. So it helps you figure out what's important to you, and it brings those things to your conscious awareness.
How do you know all of this?
Well, I did study cognitive science in school.
So I'm like, where does she know all these fun facts? Like, I feel like I learned from you with this podcast.
You're like, I have taken neuroscience classes. Okay. Like, I've sliced brains, you know?
Oh, wow.
I know, I'm sorry. That is what we do in neuroscience sometimes. But there's this part of the brain, and it operates as the filter. And what neuroscientists have discovered is that actually like 99% of what's happening around us in the world, all of that sense, perception, all of that data is actually being filtered out. So only about 1% of what's happening around us from a sensory perspective is actually reaching our conscious awareness. And the RAS is the part of our brain that determines what meets that criteria and what makes it to our awareness and what actually is like, conscious in our minds. And so 99% is unconscious, 1% is conscious. The RAS is what determines, what you look for, what you notice. And I think that's the part of the brain that's really active when people are quote unquote manifesting, because they're setting an intention and maybe they're writing down like, this thing will happen, or this thing has happened, or this is currently happening. Using that present tense form is very, very popular, traditional, and like manifestation language. And writing something down or making a decision, like really setting your sights on something, teaches that part of your brain that this objective and this reality is important to you.
Yeah.
And when something is important to you, your brain filters for that thing. So if you're in the market for a red Prius, you want to get a Prius, you want a red one, and let's say, you end up buying a red Prius, and if you look around when you drive down the street, you will see so many red Priuses. Actually, I don't even know if Prius makes red Priuses, but anyway, if Toyota makes red Priuses, because I'm not looking for them. You're like, wow, this example is botched. But if you are looking for this car or you purchase one of these cars, your brain is now recognizing all of the red Priuses out there because it knows that this is important to you. And so I loved what you said about trying to open all these doors, because there are so many opportunities all around us all the time. So many doors we can open. But if we're not looking for those doors, or if they aren't reaching our conscious awareness, then we won't even know that we can open them because we haven't noticed them in the first place. So what I find really compelling about the ideas around manifestation is the fact that we can actually look neuroscientifically at how we make decisions, how we become aware of things, and we can recognize that at the very least, when we write down intentions, we tell our brains that these things are important to us.
Yes.
And when we know they're important to us, we look for those opportunities. And so that's something that was like so amazing to me, that really made me curious about the idea of manifestation.
Well, I had absolutely no idea on the science behind that, so thank you for educating me. And in response, I actually have a secret to tell you. That 2 years ago, I wrote down like, what are all my goals that I want in my life, right? And I'm happy to vocalize that. Like, I wanted to have my own company, right? That one has been longer than 2 years. And then after that, I wanted to have my own podcast. I wanted to have my own coffee shop. I wanted to write a book. And like, lo and behold, 2 years later, we're sitting here on the Start Something podcast, and I'm doing it with someone who's amazing, which is so much fun, right? And it comes down to exactly what you just said, which is I wrote it down 2 years ago, and I keep socializing that message. Like, if you ask anyone who knows me, they know that Shruti loves coffee and she's going to start a coffee shop, and she doesn't know how or when or where, but it's going to happen, right? And same thing with this podcast. You and I were separately talking about how much part of our mission and our value for life is empowering women. And we both separately had these ideas of having a podcast together, and look at where we are now. We've recorded a ton of episodes already, and we have the best time together. At least I do. I don't know what you're doing.
No, I'm having a great time. Well, on the side, when I come to record an episode, you also feed me waffles. So I'd say I'm getting a lot out of this experience. But no, I can just relate to what you said so much. I totally agree with what you're sharing. And I had a really bizarre experience as well before I was even curious about manifestation. So this happened when I was 20 years old, and my friend gave me this little tiny notebook. It was like really cute, and I was like, oh, well, I'll just try that thing that I've heard about writing things as if they've happened. So I wrote down, I said, my name is Bailey, I'm 25 years old, and I'm the CEO of a company that I started. And I remember writing that down and looking at it and being like, I'm 20, right? I'm looking at it and I'm like, what company will I possibly have started by the time I'm 25 years old? Like, that's insane. That's what my thinking mind said as soon as I wrote it down. But some part of me wanted to write that.
Of course.
And did. I remember looking back at that book a year later. I'm 21, and I've already started my company perimeter.
That's crazy.
I'm getting chills thinking about it. It's like, oh my gosh, it was not even in the realm of possibility. Despite the fact that I wrote it down, I wrote it while part of my brain was like, that's ridiculous. What company could you possibly start? Like, how are you qualified to do something like that? But I looked back a year later, I'm 21, and I've already started it. And even though I'd written, oh, I'm 25, my brain was already saying, oh, she wants to be the CEO of a company. She wants to be a founder. Let's look for opportunities. And I wonder if the reason why I started my company perimeter, I wonder if when I experienced the challenges that are really behind the company, the challenges that we try to solve at perimeter, I wonder if something in the back of my mind was like, this is a big problem we're experiencing. Maybe this is something that we can develop a solution for.
Yeah.
And clearly I did go on to develop something and work with an amazing team to develop, a solution to the challenge that we wanted to solve for. But I wonder if in the back of my mind, my RAS was always filtering on my behalf.
Totally.
And working for me to help me create the life that I envisioned for myself.
Yeah.
And so it's a little spooky when these things happen, but I have seen so many stories about the most incredible things happening and being tied to the intentions that people placed even when they were like a little anxious about being so bold, even just with ourselves.
Totally. And we were driving back to my place over here, and I was telling you that I'm just in the mood to take shots in the dark. Like, I'm writing stuff down and I'm saying, this is what I want, this is what I'm feeling, and I make moves towards it, right? Like, I realized like this application had a deadline for tonight, and I suddenly remembered that at midnight last night, for example, and I applied for it. But that was something I'd seen maybe months ago, right? So just little things. My brain is working behind the scenes. I don't know the science as well as you do. You're the doctor here. You're the closest thing we got to a doctor in this room.
Then we're in trouble.
Okay, I hope nothing ever happens to us.
I know CPR.
Okay. But yeah, we digress. Like, we're back to manifestation. What about those who are listening who don't believe us? They're probably like, what are these girls saying? It's a little too cheesy. How do I trust them?
Well, I think for anyone who's a skeptic in this area, one, I can totally empathize because I have been a skeptic in this space specifically, and that's why I think the science is so interesting. And this is one of those things that I thought of in terms of like, well, what's the worst thing that could happen if I write down my goals, and let's say I write them in present tense. So instead of saying I will do this, I'll write down I have achieved this. I am fluent in this language, whatever my goals are. And if I write those goals down and I write them down in present tense, the worst thing that could happen is I'm more clear about the goals that I have for myself. So why not just try it? I mean, it only can have a positive impact. And so it's one of those things that is, I think, worth an experiment. And I will say that I'm not like on the manifestation train asking no questions. I really believe that we can actually create things in our lives that maybe aren't for our highest good. We're trying to like force something that isn't working. Like, if you've ever been in a relationship where you're like, gosh, I need this specific relationship to work, but it's just not really working. I do think that we can use some of these, let's say like this part of our brain to keep us in a situation that might not actually be as healthy for us as we want. And so I do think I kind of, I move away from some aspects of manifestation because I think that it's also important to, at least for me personally, to go into like goal setting and my life with some openness to there being even better things than what I'm imagining. And there's this phrase that I've heard so many times in my life, and it really impacted, I think, the way that I ended up meeting my now fiance. And it's this idea that, oh, this situation was better than my wildest dreams.
Yeah.
Or a situation was better than my wildest imagination. And I've heard that phrase so many times. And it makes me think, given how many times I've heard that phrase, could we not be dreaming a little bit more wild?
Yeah.
Like, if something was beyond your wildest imagination, then why are we playing small, even with ourselves, in what we're imagining? And so it seems logical that the experiences that we can have can be better than the best thing we can imagine. And so I told myself, especially with relationships, and I was, thinking about this, especially while I was single, and I was trying to figure out, well, what kind of relationship do I want to have?
Yeah.
And I wrote down for myself, it can be so much better than the best you can imagine. And I'd spent years imagining in detail, writing down lists of like what I want to, find in a partner, what I hope to maybe manifest in a partner, etc. And there's a lot that I can say about that and like that process of partnership specifically. But I got to this point where I felt like, gosh, I'm writing these lists. Maybe I should surrender this and say, it can be better than the best I can imagine.
Yes.
And say, I'm open to that possibility.
Yeah.
And I can truly say today that my relationship with my fiance is just eons more amazing than the best I'd allowed myself to imagine. Like, I'd put a ceiling on what was possible.
Yeah.
And our relationship has just blown me away. And
you guys are amazing. You guys are my favorite couple.
Thank you. Thank you. We've like adopted you. You're like our kid now. But that experience and quite a few others that happened around a similar time helped me develop a new thought around manifestation, which is our brains are very powerful and they absolutely can help us achieve things that we want to achieve. But also, personally, I believe that there are these opportunities out there that are kind of meant for us. And if we don't try to force everything to be exactly like we need it or we expect that it should be, if we stay open and we say, this or something better, like maybe there's something better, and I'm willing to take the steps and achieve the goals, but be open to something even more amazing than my wildest imagination, I think that leaves room for the universe to operate as well. And, and it gives us an opportunity to say, hey, or for me personally, maybe I don't have all the answers.
And you don't have all the answers realistically, right?
100%. Yeah. Factually.
I kind of think of life as a playground in a sense. Like, that's always how I operated. Like in college, I was like, college is my playground. I can make all the mistakes in the world. And then after that, I probably can't. Mm-hmm. But then I entered the real world and I was like, no way. Like real life, like life is a playground. And truly it's that mindset shift of being open and letting things come to you and also putting things out there, right? It's a mix and match of energies, but energies I really strongly believe in energies. Like when I stand next to you, I feel an energy. When I stand next to a person I have no idea about, the first thing my gut, like how I know whether it's good or not, is based off of energies. And the more energies that you let come into you, the more opportunities you're letting come into you, and you get the power to say no. But if you don't try, you don't have that ability to be able to say no. Absolutely. And I love this idea about energy. I think this is actually one of the reasons why I've seen a lot of frustration and also experienced frustration in the manifestation world, because we'll write our list and we're like, has it manifested? When's it gonna happen? And I think this is where faith and surrender can play a really big role, because one of the ideas around manifestation is we don't just need to write it as if it's happened, we need to actually feel as if it's happened. Yeah. And I think that when we engage that surrender instead of just saying, oh, it all has to happen, it actually helps us get into a space where we don't have the resistance to those experiences that we otherwise might create. And so I think there's something to be said for manifestation, and there's really something to be said for saying, I'm surrendering this and I'm open to, I'm going to set these goals, but I'm going to stay open to something even more amazing happening. And I think having that openness and the intentionality go hand in hand together in a way that has a really powerful impact. Yeah. And part of the reason, there might be some listeners on this call who are like, that you're stating the obvious. It's so easy to be open-minded, but I feel like for people like us, like people who are quite type A personalities, like,
control freaks.
Yeah, hit it on the nail, literally. That's not an easy thing to do. You have to actually explicitly say, Shruti, calm down, chill out, take a step back, and let life happen.
Totally. My list writers out there, like, takes one to know one.
Yeah.
I get it. I totally agree. And I think that is not easy for us. And I think, learning how to be in control, learning how to, create some certainty in our lives is something that helps us feel safe. And that makes me wonder, and it makes me ask the question, like, maybe we're not on this planet to feel safe all the time. Like, maybe being open to uncertainty and surrendering to something like bigger than ourselves is actually why we're on the planet.
It's why we are on the planet. I strongly believe that.
No, I'm glad you confirmed.
Yeah, I confirmed it. Guys, we don't need anything else.
She actually Shruti just told us the meaning of life.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you guys for coming to this podcast.
If you've been wondering, here it is.
Yeah, quite literally.
I can't wait until we're able to have these conversations also, like, with the people who are listening and with our community, because I'm sure there are going to be so many questions that come up. We would love to respond and just engage in a dialogue about some of these ideas, because I know for myself, I can't speak for you, but I'll say for myself, like, I definitely don't have all the answers. And so
neither do I.
I love really getting into things and figuring out, like, what is going on? Like, why are we here? What are we supposed to be doing? And what tools and resources are out there that we can use to help us experience that life.
We want to learn as much as you want to learn from us. Let's just phrase it that way.
I love it.
Yeah.
That was perfectly phrased.
Yeah.
But let's high five.
Yes. Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for another awesome episode of Start Something. We'll catch you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.